Alright everyone, you're welcome again to my YouTube channel. Here we discuss important topics in theory of music. So if this is your first time here, all you have to do for me is to subscribe and like my channel, right? When you do that for me, you are actually encouraging me to do more. So this is the only validation I need from you. Try to support me by subscribing to my channel and liking my videos, right? That's the only way you can support me. Thank you as you do that. Okay, today I've brought to you another interesting topic on the theory of music, and today we're going to talk about chord. Alright, I'm very sure as a musician or as a music lover, you must have heard about the word chord in the past. Alright, so when we talk about chord, what is chord? What is the possibilities in chords? Meanwhile, we are going to focus on the following learning objectives. The first one, we're going to describe what chord is. We're going to explain the different formation of chords. We're going to differentiate between one triad and the other. And the next one, we're going to identify triad types and their generic names. And we're going to elucidate the concept of extended chords. You see, the word chord is actually a very important topic in music, and it is dated back into the historic period of music. The word is actually derived from a Greek word which means strings, but it was adopted into the Western music, right? So the chord has to do with combination of pitches, right? We're going to discuss a lot more about this in this class. So all you have to do is sit back and enjoy the class. Okay, let's get into it. The question is, how would you describe a chord? A chord is the unit of harmony that has a selection of pitches or notes. When we're talking about chord, we're actually referring to a group of pitches that are carefully combined together, alright, and are probably played together or played independently, but at the end of the day, all these notes are interrelated. Particular intervals are expected. One thing about chord is that each of the notes that forms a chord are actually related by a specific kind of interval, and they are interrelated by the number of semitone or the number of tones between a note and the next. I've done videos on intervals in the past, so if you want to get more on this, you can check this video or this video. Alright, so you'll get more on interval, what interval really entails. So we may not be able to elaborate on it in this class. Now, pitches of chords can either sound simultaneously, right? They can either sound together. If you say a chord has 2 pitches or 3 pitches, so they can either sound simultaneously like a block chord or in succession, one played after one another. That is in the case of arpeggio. Meanwhile, a chord usually consists of 2 or more interrelated pitches. So it can be 2 notes, it can be more, right? It can be octave, it could be, yeah, those are chords, right? They have at least 2 or more notes or pitches that are interrelated and in a certain way, which we're going to find out before the end of this video. Now, different kinds of chords as well as how they are related to one another make up the study of harmony. So harmony is an element of music, is a part of music that can never be overemphasized. That has to do with how pitches are combined and it's an essential discussion in music. So, in this class, getting the knowledge of chord also exposes you to the study of harmony, right? So we are essentially going to do more in discussing what harmony is and the possibilities of harmony in music. Alright, let's go. We have different kind of chords before us, right? The first one, a chord can be like this. Ooh, that's kind of different, right? Okay, and a chord can be like this. Wow, a chord can be like that. And a chord can be like this. Wow. Yeah, that's an example of a chord, right? And a chord can also be like this. That's quite a lot. And a chord can be like this. Woo! In all, you see that you have different kind of notes, right? Another thing is that the interval or the relationship between each note differs. That is very, very short. They don't have the same relationship. And that brings us to the next topic in this discussion. We want to talk about different ways in which chords can be formed, right? A chord can be formed by deliberately allowing certain interval or certain gap between the pitches that make up the chord. Now we have the tertian chord, and an example of that is CEG. Right? That's a tertian chord. It has to do with three superimposed notes or pitches at the interval of third apart, right? So from C to E, a third, and from E to G is another third. So you have a chord of superimposed third or a stacked third, right? That is the tertian chord. And it's a very, very common one when discussing harmony or when making music generally. It's a kind of common chords, right? Alright, let's go to the next one. We have the quartal chord. Quartal, it has to do with 4. So you have a stacked fourth, interval fourth, right? For example, we have the C, F, and B. Wow. So you see that from C to F is a fourth, and from F to B is another fourth. Wow. Different, right? Okay. It was commonly used around the end of the 19th century by composers from the 19th century. Now let's look at the next one. We have the quintal chord, right? Quintal chord, so it has to do with 5. So stack of pitches that has the interval of fifths apart. That is a quintal chord. An example is CGD. CGD. Wow. Similar to, right? Well, 5 notes apart. That's a lot, right? These two chords, quintal chords and quartal chords, are popularized towards the end of the 19th century. So the 19th century composers popularized this. So it was commonly used by them in making music, right? Focus our attention will not be on these two other chords, but the first one, the tertian chord, that's where our attention will be for this class, right? Let's go. The commonest form of chord is tertian chords, like I said. The commonest form of tertian chord is the triad. The triad, right? Triad. Alright, we have 2 root words there, right? Okay, when you say tri, it has to do with 3, right? So a group of 3 pitches. Tri, like the tricycle, 3 wheels, or triangle, 3 angles or 3 sides. Is that okay? So triad, it has to do with 3 notes. So it's a group of 3 notes that are combined in thirds, right? A triad is any 3-tone chord which is built in superimposed thirds. C, E is a third, and E to G is another third, alright? And if you want to extend it, it's another third. That is G to B is another third. And you can even go higher from B to D, from D to F, and so on and so forth, right? But in this case, we're going to talk about the simplest form of it, which has just 3 notes. So we have the simplest one, that's C, E, G, right? Well, let's see what happened in between this. Okay, I have tried to make an introduction about this in my previous video on intervals, especially on harmonic intervals. You can check it out through any of the linked videos. Okay, now let's talk about the properties of the triads. It has the root. Root is the first note of the triad. It's a pitch that actually gives the triad its name. When you say the root of something, the base, the foundation, just like the root of a tree, right? It means the source where the tree gets its nutrients. So it's the source, right? It's the source of the chord. So the root can be on any letter, on any pitch. It means you can create chord on any pitch at all, right? We have the next one, the third. Simply from the root, right, to the next note is 3 notes. So that's why it's called the third, right? And we also have the fifth. So from the root to this note is a fifth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5. Right? So we have the root, the third, and the fifth. Now you see that the interval between them is a third. Or it's just like your hand. You see that you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's the root, the third, and the fifth. The root, the third, and the fifth. That's your triad, right? Now let's move on. So this is a C triad, right? C, E, G, and C is the root, E is the third, and G is the fifth, right? How would you describe a triad? Although the chord has 2 or more notes, like I have stated previously, a chord has 2 or more notes. So any 2 notes at all can make a chord. It can, regardless of the interval, right? Those can be called a chord, so long 2 or more pitches are combined or are meant to be interrelated, either being played together simultaneously in the case of a block chord, like I discussed previously, or being played successively in the case of arpeggio, right? All these are chords. But in the case of triads, a triad is a complete chord. It has all the functional parts, the root, the third, and the fifth. And a triad is the building block of harmony, which consists of 3 notes. The 3 notes of a triad have an interval of thirds apart. I have mentioned this before, and it is very, very important. It's very, very important to establish this base in this discussion. The bottom note of the triad is called the root. Like I said, the middle note, the third, a third above the root, called the third, right? And the top note is the fifth. That's the fifth above the root, right? Alright, there's a task before you. If you know the answer, put the correct answers in the comment section. And as usual, let's try to answer the questions together. Alright, let's go. The first question says, construct a triad on every pitch in C major scale. Alright, so the first one, on the tonic, which is C, remember that triads are built in thirds in such a way that you have superimposed thirds, a stack of thirds. So the first one, C, first one is the tonic of the scale of C major, which is C, right? So the next notes from C will be the third from C, which is C, D, E, right? E is the next note. The two will sound together as. Alright, you now look for the third from E. So E, F, G. 1, 2, 3, right? So G is the third note from E, G, right? So that the chord is C, E, G, right? So let's go to the next one. So D, D, E, F. So the next note is F, right? And the next note from F is F, G, A, right? A. Remember that in music we don't have H. So musical letters are from A to G, the first 7 letters in the alphabet, right? So when you get to G, basically you go back to the beginning and you go back to A. And that's why we have A there, right? So basically you take one note and skip the next to take the next one. And that will give you the third, right? So let's continue. To build a chord on E, we have E, then G, then B, right? E, G, B. Right, E, G, B. So to build a chord on F, it will now be F as the root, then the next one will be A, and the next one will be C, right? So that it will give F, A, C. Right, so to build a chord on G, so G is the root, right? And you have the third, which is B, and you have the fifth, which is D. So that you have G, B, D. Right. Now let's go to the next one. The next one, to build a chord on A. So A is the root, right? A is the root. So you look for the third from A, which is C, and the fifth from A, which is E. So there you have A, C, E. So that's the chord. Okay. So to build a chord on B, you have B as the root. B is the root because, like we mentioned previously, the root of a chord is what gives the chord its name, right? It's where the chord is being formed from. So it has its origin from the root. Every chord has its origin from the root, right? The root is the first note. So B is the first note here, right? Invariably the root. So the third from the root is D, and the fifth from the root is F. So there you have B, D, F, right? So and the last one, of course, C, E, G. So those are the chords on C major. And when you look at all these chords, they are just the basic chord on C major. It invariably means that on C major, you have the first chord, that is the chords on the tonic, as C, E, G. So the second chord, which is on the supertonic, as D, F, A, right? So C, E, G, D, F, A. And the third chord, which is on the medians, as E, G, B, right? E being the root of the chord. Now the fourth chord, which is on the subdominant, as F, A, C. And the fifth one, which is on the dominant, as G, B, D. And the next chord, which is on the submedians, as A, C, E. And the next one, which is on the leading note, so B being the root, as B, D, F, right? And of course the last one on the octave, just similar to the first one. All right, so these arrangements of notes should be at the back of your mind because it's very, very important in building triad for other scales, right? So what changes is the addition of flat, sharps. So that's what changes. But you have the triads in this form. You have the triads basically in this form: C, E, G, D, F, A, E, G, B, F, A, C, G, B, D, A, C, E, B, D, F, right? So you have them in this arrangement. But what changes is the addition of flats or sharps on every other scales. So basically that's the triads on the scale of C major, and they are formed by stack of thirds, right? So they are built in thirds apart. So that's what you should know here. Now let's go to the second question. It says, create a triad on each of the following notes. Now, let's see what happens here. It says create a triad on D, right? Of course, D is the root. So D will be the first note or the first pitch of the triad, right? And the next one is the third from D, which is F. So you have F, and the next one is A. So that you have D, F, A. Okay, now let's go to the next one. So build a chord on E. So it means E is the root of the chord. So if E is the root of the chord, you look for the third from E, which is G, right? And the fifth from E, which is B, right? So that you have E, G, B. So that you have E, G, B, right? Okay, so the next one says build a triad on F, right? So in this case, F is the root. You can build a triad on any F on the treble staff, right? So you can build it on the first space. You can start your root from the first space. And of course, you can even take it up to the last line, right? So they are both Fs. So whichever way you want to go about it. But for this exercise, we have chosen F on the first space of the treble staff. Now let's continue. So the next one is A, right? So F, A, and the fifth will be C. So you have F, A, C, right? That is our triad on F. So now let's go to the next one. It says build a triad on G. So it will be G, B, and D. G being the root, the base, is the foundation of the triad. Okay, now let's go to the next one. Since build a triad on A. So A is the root, and C is the third, and E is the fifth. So that you have A, C, E, right? So that's our triad on A. Right, now let's go to the next one. It says build a triad on B, right? So B is the root, D is the third, and F is the fifth. So they have B, D, F, right? Wow. All right. So we're going to talk about these triads, the names, and the difference between one triad and the other, right? So they don't sound the same, right? So they have different arrangements of pitches, all right? So they don't sound the same. So we'll be talking more on them in our subsequent lessons. Now let's continue. So it says build a triad on C. So we have C as the root, E as the third, and G as the fifth. Building a triad on D means D is the root, right? So it means D is the root, F is the third, and A is the fifth. All right, this is the answer to this exercise. Okay, you see that all these triads actually don't have the same feel. They don't really sound alike, right? And it's because of the combination of notes, the intervals between a pitch and the next. All these are the reasons why they don't sound alike. Now let's continue. The types of triads. What are the types of triads? So basically we have 4 kinds of triads, and they are the major triad, the minor triad, the diminished triad, and the augmented triad. Alright, so we're going to be talking about all this in details. But before we go into that, remember, a triad is a kind of chord. It's a complete chord, right? So we're going to be talking about them in details. I have tried to lay a foundation of triads in my previous video on intervals, so you can check it out. You can go back into my channel and watch all the videos, right? You can also check my channel for all the topics on scale, meter, time signature, key signature, modes. I've done several videos on this area, so you can check them up, right? In the next lesson, we are going to talk more about all this. We're going to talk more about the name of each of the triads. We've come to the end of the lesson, and if you have any comment, if you have any question, you can put your questions in the comment section, and I will see you in the next one.